Welcome back to Ripple Effect Connection. I'm your host, Christy Hugic. I am a Level 3 integrative health practitioner and a certified international health coach. And the goal of this podcast is to introduce you to some of the incredible souls who've enriched my life with their insights. But today's guest is unique. It's only the second time the show has featured someone who I have coached. Kathy Young is an incredible inspiration. She was already on the path to improving her day-to-day life, but nearly 5 years ago, she made the bold decision to break up with alcohol. And that one choice created a ripple effect that transformed her mindset, her health, and her daily life. We talk about what led to that decision, how it's impacted her journey with autoimmune disease, and why nourishing your body and your mind is an ongoing process, but not a perfect one. This conversation is real, raw, and full of grace. Whether you're sober curious, navigating your own health challenges, or just trying to live with more intention, you'll take something meaningful from her story. Kathy, welcome to Ripple Effect Connection. I'm so glad to have you.
I am thrilled to be here with you today. So thank you for asking me to join you.
Yeah, and it's always good to catch up. Like I tell everybody, I say this almost every episode, but for me, it's a great excuse to catch up with people. And today, like what we're doing is very unique because it is the first time that I can think of that I've had someone on who I actually had as a client in the past. But your story is inspiring, and I know that you have a lot of great things to say that are going to inspire other people. So that's where we wanted to start. You'll remember that when I coached you through a Whole30, one of the things we would always talk about is your why. We all know it's the foundation of what we do. So I start there with everybody. So Kathy, what is your why?
My why, God, it's just, and it's interesting because I love to ask people that question too, because I think once you're clear on your why, life becomes so much easier. I had been fighting issues like with my body and my health, and like a lot of us out there, I wasn't getting answers. And I think I had just kind of like hit this rock bottom with my health. And it's like, I can't continue to live like this. And I needed to figure out what was going on. And so I think that, okay, I'm 57 now. So it was 5 years ago that we did the Whole30 together. And, that December of 2019 just said, I've got to try something different. And I'm sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. And I want to see if doing this Whole30, which interesting is I actually did a Whole30 on my own in January. And then I joined you in a Whole30, I think it was like March or April. So I had successfully done a Whole30 and I was blown away by how I felt. And then I thought, you know what, let's do this. And next time I found you on a Whole30 page and just said, hey, I want to actually have coaching this time, because I think when you have coaching, there's a different level of accountability. Again, my why is just, I wanted to start showing up, feeling good, and finding the best version of me possible.
Yeah, and I think that group in particular will always stand out to me because there was a lot of success stories from that group. And what's funny enough is there's more than one of you that went on to go deeper that I know. And I know like myself, who I went to work with Dr. Cole individually, you ended up in our autoimmune health reset program before I became a coach. So we're kind of following each other. So we're following each other.
Exactly. And it's just, again, because even though I'd had these successful Whole30s and, there's nothing unique about me, we're all guilty of like going back to our old ways. And I had discovered Dr. Cole through Instagram and had been following him for a while, and I clicked on that thing to do more. And I remember they send you this test. And I think it was like a urine test. I can't really remember what it was.
Yeah, it is.
But when I took that test and when it comes back in different colors and they have it ranked against where your color was, I'm not going to lie. I mean, it was like I've been punched in the gut because I wasn't at the far extreme color, but I was close. So to me, I think it was talking about like inflammation in the body and all these other things. And even though I thought I was doing a little bit better, I was really blown away by like, I've got so far to go. And at the same time, I'm not crazy with these symptoms I'm having, because when you have autoimmune diseases or when you have health issues in general, so forget about the facts, having an autoimmune disease is another twist to my story. But when you're not feeling your best and, you're tired all the time and you can't explain your fatigue and you've got brain fog and all these things going on, you do feel a little crazy. I'm not going to lie. Yes. And I'm sure you felt like that at times too.
Yeah, and certainly the doctors don't help sometimes, with that. I think when I had my symptoms, and I think back to 2016, and, the doctor was like, well, you have anxiety, so he wanted to give me a sleeping pill. Well, of course I have anxiety. I don't know what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
And you're not helping, and you're basically telling me there's nothing wrong when, we are the people that know our bodies the best. So, I think you would probably share this advice to anybody out there. It's that this isn't made up. This isn't in your head. There is a nervous system component always to all of these things. Yes, 100%. But that does not mean that it's in your head. It just means that it can help project symptoms also. So that is part of what we do and part of what we have to attach. But I would tell anybody, never let a doctor have you question what you know about your own body. Would you kind of say the same thing to people who were doing this?
100%. I hope people don't go through like the struggles that I went to when you finally do listen to your body. And I will say, thankfully, my husband was, he was becoming sick and tired of me being sick and tired because I was like laid up in bed. I mean, I think I'm not lying. I was spending a quarter of the year, not all at once, but a quarter of the year I was spending in bed because I was in pain, like with my back issues, with my gut issues, with my fatigue. At first he'd be like, Kathy, everybody's tired. We're not in our 20s anymore. And I'm like, no, this is a different level of fatigue. This is not normal. Or like with my back issues. And he's like, we all have back issues. I can't walk. I'm like, no, this is not like I haven't pulled a muscle. This is completely different. And so, even for a long time, he and I had a tug of war. And now, like, he is one of my biggest advocates. I mean, even today, he said to me, Kathy, you're off on all of your medication because you just had hip replacement surgery 2.5 weeks ago. He saw me eating something I shouldn't have eaten. I had a yummy pretzel, Dots pretzels. And he's like, what are you doing? You don't have anything that's helping you. And this is poisoning your body. So I'm thrilled that I have the home support, and not everybody has the support that I have.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And we do see that. I've heard many other stories where it does take its toll on the other person. And the other person, again, struggles to believe it sometimes because, again, they're not in your skin and you're hearing test X was negative and test Y was negative. And sometimes they're starting to think it might be in your head. And so that can be difficult on anybody too. So we know that's a component. So I want you to take me back a little bit to what the symptoms were that you were experiencing when you're starting to figure out there's something wrong. So I want to give them little snippets of kind of your journey and also make people understand that this is not a straight line path all the time. So what were some of the signals from your body that you were getting that something was awry?
Yeah. So probably about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, I don't know. Like I was having this really bad sharp pain at the bottom of my rib cage and like this excruciating pain. And, I could be like, I wasn't even doing, I could be like sitting in traffic, driving there on the road or whatever, but I would get this sharp pain that felt like it was just driving through all the way through my back. That was the thing that was the most annoying. Like I probably didn't realize I had brain fog. I probably didn't realize all these other things. And I was having like back issues in my lower back. I had been in the emergency room at least 4 times for my back. There was nothing wrong. It had all my, what do they do? The CT scans, everything came back fine or whatever. But this nagging pain was it was debilitating. Like I went to visit a friend for a weekend and I was still drinking. I broke up with alcohol 5 years ago, but I was still drinking at the time and they have amazing wine and they're amazing chefs. And I'm laying on their sofa, they are pulling out all the good stuff. And I was like, I don't want anything like the food they had. And I'm like, I had to go up and get in bed. And, I'm visiting their house for the weekend and I'm just laid up in bed in pain. And a friend of mine in Atlanta, I was telling her my symptoms because again, I was driving my husband crazy. And there was a functional health doctor that was in North Atlanta, in the northern suburbs. And she said, try him. And then she said, I want you to get this book and I want you to track your food. So I remember going to my first functional health doctor and I walked in there and I looked at him and I said, if you told me today that if I quit drinking alcohol and all of my body pain would go away and I would feel better, I will quit today. Well, he did all these tests on me, and it was kind of like this Eastern Western medicine because he would put these vials on my stomach. I don't know the technical name for it, looking for intolerances. It wasn't necessarily like allergies, but, intolerances to medications and food and all this kind of stuff. And it was a little bit off the charts. But he also said, you know what? Stay away from red wine, but alcohol is not an issue. The only thing I'm seeing issues with is some red wine. So I worked with him for a while. And oddly enough, I believe his name is Dr. Cole also. So I worked with him, and then, it's expensive. And so once I kind of felt like I'd gotten it under control, I stopped seeing him because I couldn't afford to keep going to these appointments. Yeah. But we were on all kinds of supplements and seeing great success. So then, fast forward probably 18 months later, and I am right back where I was again. And so that's when I did my first Whole30. And within 2 weeks, because, I never stopped drinking last time. I changed, some of my eating patterns, but I didn't do everything like you have to do on Whole30. So I did my, January 2020 Whole30. And in 2 weeks, I remember, and it's so cliche because you hear about this from people from Whole30, just stick with it, just get with it. If you can get through day 10, and, I wake up, as I'm, starting my week 3 or whatever, I'm like, my God, I feel like $1 million. Now, I hadn't lost a pound, but I was feeling better. And it really got my attention. And so, at the end of that 30 days, I was like, I don't think I'm going to drink again. But I did. I still, for the next 5 or 6 months, I still did, but not like I was, drinking before. And I didn't really fully do the reintroduction program, which you're supposed to do. Hence, when I came to you a couple months later, and you were real clear on, don't just do this for 30 days and then go back to normal, because you're not going to be able to connect the dots and put any of this back together. And so you were strict, and I need people who are strict, which is great. So, I feel like I had a really successful time with you. And then, just like we all do, go back into my old patterns, then I find Dr. Cole, I sign up for his 16
And that's
weeks.
more strict.
Yeah, it's really strict. Yeah, because I just, so I ended up signing up for his 16-week autoimmune program. I had all of his books. I'd listened to all of his books on tape and all of his recipes. I mean, there's a lot of free information that he gives away, so it's like, it's not like you have to go to Dr. Cole or you're not going to get any help, but he is very generous with a lot of information that's accessible to all of us. But I felt like I needed to dig deeper. And so I did his 16-week protocol. I was doing the bone broth, making bone broth once a week, doing all of that stuff. And it was great because it's a really tailored program. This is what you're going to eat week 1. I don't remember exactly the pattern. So month 1, month 2, and month 3, but it was great because, you're doing this stuff and you're just really feeling better. And at the same time as I'm doing this food stuff, I'm still having my back issues where, I'm kind of debilitated. And, I finally go back to the orthopedic surgeon for the 3rd time. And this time when the guy looked at my x-rays, he's like, and I'd been told before, you're fine. Well, I was fine from the orthopedic surgeon's perspective because I didn't need to have surgery. And I'm like, I can't walk, I had to buy a cane, all this stuff to, get around. But I was like, I'm going to end up in a wheelchair. I am 52 years old. If I don't figure this out, this is what's in my future. It's not just my cane today. I'm going to be the lady zooming around the grocery store in a wheelchair. So, I went to the rheumatologist, and lo and behold, and I've known since I was in my 20s that I was HLA-B27 positive, which doesn't mean much to many people. But for people who know what that is, they're like, well, this explains your uveitis and your iritis that you've had since your 20s. And this explains the stuff with your back issues. And you've got ankylosing spondylitis, which is very difficult to pronounce. That, and then through my blood test with the rheumatologist, he said, and you've got Sjogren's syndrome. And I was like, what in the world is that? He's like, well, you've got dry eyes and dry mouth. And I'm like, well, my symptoms, if I have dry eyes and dry mouth, I've had my issues with my uveitis and iritis for years. But I don't think of myself as a dry eye person. I have joint inflammation. My feet get numb, on and on and on. I could bore you to death with my symptoms. And I was really more in line with either lupus or rheumatoid arthritis. But even in a rheumatologist's office, if you're elevated, but you haven't hit that thing, they're like, oh, you don't really qualify to have lupus. Yeah. But you did, Sjogren's comes back loud and clear all the time. but I am still on the cusp between having lupus and not. And so I say my symptoms are more like in line with somebody who has lupus,
Yeah.
So it's just like all this kind of craziness and mayhem. It's just like you say, it has not been a straight line journey. I mean, it's kind of schizophrenic.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's not a straight line, and I think like you and I were talking before this, like it is important for people to understand like this is a constant process. This is
Mhm.
not like, hey, go do a program and you're done. It's not. It's constantly changing, and it's based on our environment, like you go somewhere, you get an exposure to mold and you get sick. You get an environmental toxin that you're exposed to at your job for years and you don't realize what it's doing to your body. You have a hobby that's restoring old cars, and all of a sudden we see envirotoxins that screenings that are high. So, it can be so many things and it can get very overwhelming. And so a lot of times what'll help happen for people is they get so overwhelmed they do nothing because it is a freeze mode of like, I can't do all that, or I don't know what to do next. And so it is important to give help. And I think a lot of us, Dr. Cole's very good at it. A lot of other people in this space are very good at it, that they are putting out information via podcasts, via blogs, via
Mhm.
books. And I think all of us wish that it could be a little bit cheaper, but it's like I tell people, even when I'm doing testing with my personal clients, I have to pay for those labs. They're not cheap even for me. Even
Right.
my price is not cheap, so you try to find the best way you can to put them in packages and have that be done. And I would say 90% of the functional medicine people, it seems expensive, but 90% of us probably aren't even making what we put into it, because we could never charge for the number of hours that we actually put into a client. That's why it doesn't get covered by insurance. So I want people to understand like why it is that way. And I hope there's a day where it's not. And I think we're moving closer and closer to it. But like
Mhm.
insurance companies don't pay doctors for more
No.
than 15 minutes. So if a doctor spends 30 minutes with you, like a regular medical doctor, they're losing money because they can't bill it. So it's the system screwed up. So that doesn't help.
It really is. And it's interesting because there's a doctor here in Atlanta, Dr. Taz, and she's pretty well known. And she's got two offices in Atlanta, and it's called Center Springs. And I don't think it's Center Springs Functional Health, Center Springs, whatever. But I had found them, everybody's like, oh my God, Kathy, they're so expensive. And again, I mean, I'd already done, Dr. Cole's stuff. I'd done it. I'm living at probably like I told you, I fluctuate between 70 and 80% of being right. It is not good enough for somebody with my issues. I mean, I don't want to say I will ever go to 100% because I'd be lying if I said I'm never going to have a bite of carrot cake again.
Right.
And so as soon as we say never, it's really hard to achieve that. But what I know, there are times that I'm more in that 90% range, and then I slip back down to that 70 or 80. 70 or 80, my quality of life is negatively impacted at 70 or 80%. If I want to feel how I need to feel, it's like more but eating and exercising and sleeping. I need to be at a baseline of 90% in order to function properly. So I was thrilled when I found this doctor here in Atlanta because, my traditional primary care doctor like blows me off because my labs are in range, even though if it's like 4 to 75, if I'm a 4.1, they still
Yeah.
considered me fine.
Yeah.
And what's so nice about the office in Atlanta at Center Springs, I mean, they dig deeper.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, if I'm at a 4.1, they're like, this isn't good enough. Average in America is, sorry folks, I don't mean to offend anybody out there, but average in America health wise is bad. Like it
Yeah.
is not a good quality of life. And so, you know, I do it all. I do the supplements, and my lab work in January or late December has never been better. And so, I wish that traditional medicine would cover functional health doctors because you guys actually like care. Not saying that the traditional
Yeah.
doctors don't care. They're overwhelmed and they don't have time to do this.
And they just aren't trained to connect the dots, right?
No.
So we're never looking at and when you go to an orthopedic, and again, a lot of this does go down to insurance too. When
Hmm.
you go to an orthopedic and you have shoulder pain, they're not going to look at your neck. They're
Yeah.
not, they're going to look at where the pain is, and that's it. And most of us know, take functional health outside of it and take like my background as a personal trainer. I already know that if someone's having pain somewhere, that's likely not where it's coming from. That's just where it's reflecting. So if someone's got knee pain, we got to look at the ankle and we got to look at the hip, because it can be above it, it can be below it. Just like in functional medicine, we're never looking at an isolated lab, because the body works in unison together, and you need to see how all those things are working. And I tell people all the time, they laugh, because when I go get my blood work done, it's 18 vials of blood. And because that's all the markers we need to see at the same time. The other thing I would caution people at, and you sort of touched on it, the ranges that you get at LabCorp and Quest for your blood work, those ranges, who are the people that get most of the blood work? They're people that are not well, right?
Yeah.
Most of the people. That's an average. That's not optimal. So
Right.
in range does not mean optimal. So functional lab ranges look very different than what you get from Quest and LabCorp. The biggest thing you've learned, which I know it's a lot, because there's a lot of things you learn in this journey, but what is the biggest thing you've learned from all the different plans you've tried, all the different food experiments you tried? And then we're going to get into your breakup with alcohol in a little bit. But what is the biggest thing that you've learned in this journey that you would say, I need to pass this on to the next person to help them, because I learned it and it was changed the game for me?
Yeah. So before I did Whole30, and I can't remember if this was before I saw Dr. Cole, number one, not Dr. Will Cole, but I remember going to Publix, and Higgy, the lab, the blood pressure thing. I was like, I'm just going to check my blood pressure. And I remember I was 144/99. And I was like, holy love of God. And I was, I was really remarried, but I have 3 kids that I was like solely responsible for. I'm like, I'm in stroke level. I'm like, I had red flags all around 144/99. Now I have a friend who said, oh my God, that's nothing. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's horrible. And so, you know, that scared the bejesus out of me, because I'm like, my dad died at 64 from heart disease. My mom's 86. She's still with us. She's got autoimmune diseases like me, but that scared me. And so I really have learned, and I know people don't want to hear this, but I'm telling you, protein, fruits, and vegetables and supplements provide you so much freedom. And when you embrace that lifestyle, like, your life just gets easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I'm gluten intolerant. I'm not, I don't have any allergies, but I have a lot of intolerances. But what I know is, when I eat gluten becomes glue in my system. My autoimmune disease kicks into high gear. I can't walk. I can't get rid of stuff. So, you've got people who, it's like, oh, they have gluten, and I hate these words, sorry, but they have massive diarrhea, all these things. I eat gluten and I have such bad constipation.
Yeah.
I don't go to the bathroom for days.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I may have been going like once a week if I was lucky, and it was not fun at all. Well, it's not fun. I mean, it happened to me, not, I don't know, probably like 4 or 5 months ago. But I know that, like, bathroom talk is not my favorite
Well, we have
conversation.
to do it all the time, and it's so important, because that's how toxins are leaving your body. So if you're not
Yeah.
doing that, you're not
Yeah.
detoxing. So
Yeah.
it is a big, it's a big deal. I mean, it's a topic all the time. And if the number of people that come to us in the AHR program for Dr. Cole who are constipated, it's a staggering number of people.
Yeah. And it's amazing, because, when you get back on track and you're eating what you're supposed to be eating, you're taking your right supplements. And, my husband does not have an issue at all. I'm very jealous. But then when I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, like, what I have learned through all of this is, if I'm nourishing my body properly, if I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to do, my body actually does what it's supposed to do. It's, so our bodies are miraculous. They are, our body is our friend. And if we are taking care of our bodies and nurturing it properly, if we're drinking all of our water, if we're doing, I do love my electrolytes that I put in my water, because people are like, oh, water's so boring. Well, you know what? Throw some raspberries in there. Throw some, tart cherry juice in there. Like, do these things that help you, but get your 64 ounces in at minimum, and eat fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, whole food, plant-based, And when I say plant-based is not vegetarian or vegan. Some people like to go down that path. I flirted with it. Like, do I want to go there? You know what? I love red meat. I do.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
eat it, but I don't eat it all the time. But I definitely find myself, sometimes I'm like eating plant-based 100% for breakfast and lunch, and then I'll have animal protein at night.
Yeah.
But it is amazing what those simple things of fruits and vegetables, and I don't mean fried vegetables, like eating proper whole natural food is amazing.
Yeah, nutrient dense whole foods, right? If we could eliminate processed food, we're eliminating so many things, single ingredient, nutrient dense whole foods.
Yeah, that's the ticket. It's the ticket.
I think gluten, like, look, the research is there. If someone has autoimmune, gluten is really tough. It's going to exacerbate any kind of leaky gut that may exist. And it takes like 5 weeks to leave your system. So a little bit of gluten stays in there a long time, and it can be detrimental. So it is tough for people with autoimmune. We try to give people their food freedom and food peace to bring some things back or try them to see how they're working for them, which is, again, why reintroduction is so important. But it's really getting harder and harder every day to make a case for gluten to be really in anybody's life the way this is going. So it is tough.
It is. And, but I also, it really bothers me when people like decide that fruit is the enemy because there's sugar in it. And I'm like, I'm somebody, and I don't know about you, but I do not believe that fruit is the enemy. Like, I think that blueberries and raspberries and apples, like there's a place for it, Do I want to eat? If I ate fruit all day and nothing else, it's probably not great. Everything in excess is wrong. But for me, when we get down to the basics, dairy, like, I have like goat cheese. There's like sheep milk cheeses.
Yep.
I do better with, and like the goat cheese, like there's certain cheeses that I can tolerate easier, but really like the gluten. And I know everybody loves gluten, but it's just not your friend. It's not.
No. It's unfortunate. It is the way it is, right? So you're learning all of these things about your body, which is great, because really what it comes down to too is how do things work for you? Different amounts of fruits, different amount of protein, different amounts of types of animal protein. Different people are going to do better with different things.
100%.
But I do want to touch on the relationship that you had with alcohol and why you did eventually give it up. I feel like I hear more and more a lot of people giving it up. I'm hearing it more and more. So can you talk about that and tell everybody about that journey?
Absolutely. And you know what? It's really, I hate to say this, it's one of my favorite topics. And it's kind of fun because you're so passionate about like how we fuel our bodies with food. And I am pretty passionate about the benefits of breaking up with alcohol. I was married to somebody who had some pretty significant addiction issues, and unfortunately he was better for a while and ended up not, and he's no longer with us. But I think like, my alcohol journey, I probably drank more than a lot of people, but I didn't drink, but I drank pretty normal for, I was in sales. Well, I'm in sales, and like sales is a very boozy culture. We live in a very boozy culture. And what I found, I wasn't like a raging alcoholic. I proudly say I hit a rock bottom. Some people like to say I never hit a rock bottom, and like, good for you. And I'm glad. But for me, Whole30 is what got my attention with how alcohol was affecting me. And I remember after our Whole30, we had gone skiing, and my friends were like, "Oh my God, certainly you got to drink with us." And I was like, "Yeah, I just finished Whole30 and I feel great." And, succumbed to some peer pressure and had a couple drinks. And I remember I did my little Irish goodbye and went to bed early. And I'd had a glass and a half of wine. So I hadn't had a lot of alcohol. And I remember thinking, can't believe my husband hasn't come to check on me. And I remember internally getting irritated with my husband because he hadn't. It's like, well, any good husband should just come in and check on their wife and say goodnight, even though he's out there watching sports with his buddies. We were with like 5 couples, and just this angst that was inside of me. And all of a sudden I was like, I didn't have any of that the entire time I was on Whole30. I didn't have any of that internal frustration or anger or whatever you want to call it. And so, that's when I decided at that point I wasn't quitting, but I wanted to dial it back. And then like right, towards the end. So fast forward to June 21st, we'd gone on a family vacation. I'm not going to lie. I, had a confrontation with my bonus daughter, which I thought was horrific, that I initiated the whole thing. And the next day on June 21st, I was like, I can't live like this. And I remember my husband and I were out to dinner. I was drinking a yummy dirty martini, which I love. And I kind of fell to my knees and I said, God, I can't do this anymore. This is not, my quality of life is horrible. At the same time, I was like, my external looked amazing. I mean, I've got this amazing family. We've got this beautiful blended family, live in a beautiful part of Atlanta. But internally, I was really kind of in the dumps. And I don't think internally, I'm sure I could have gone lower. I didn't want to go any lower. And I'm like, enough is enough. And so that's when I, 2 days into it, I kind of came up with this tagline, living clear and present. And, I have been like an advocate and have been sharing my story out loud since day 2 about living a life without alcohol. And I was cocktail queen. I loved it. I never really drank alone. That wasn't part of my story, but I was a social drinker and, I tied it on too much from time to time or whatever. But when I started feeling so much better, and again, I've been on this like health journey. I hadn't done Dr. Cole yet, but I'd already worked with you. And everything in my life, I mean, it is a crazy snowball of how much better my life got. I started feeling better. My skin started looking better. My sleep improved, like all of these things, So you've got this food component, but then you've got this alcohol component. And I'm telling you, people don't realize it. Alcohol is such a disruptor with your sleep.
It's horrible.
Yeah,
It's
like
horrible.
my Aura ring, and it's on the fritz. I have to get a new one. But what was shocking, with your Aura, when you have an Aura ring, like have a glass of wine on a Friday night or a couple cocktails on a Friday night, your levels are not normal again until Wednesday. And so great. So Wednesday, Thursday, and part of Friday, you're like at the top of your game because you know what? You're walking or running, you're on your Peloton, you're going to yoga, you're lifting weights, you're doing all this stuff. But come Friday and Saturday, you're throwing down and having happy hour or dinner parties with your friends. And so you're poisoning your body for 2 days. And then it takes all this time to level set again. And then you do it over and over again. And,
100%.
I was part of that story and, I'm not anymore. And I've been very open with folks. I celebrate my wins. I'm coming up on 5 years, June 21st, and will tell you I'll be doing backflips. And I got a message from a coworker just the other day, and she said, a former coworker of mine, and she's like, I'm celebrating 250 days. And I want to thank you so much for being so open with your journey, for sharing and being so vulnerable with your journey. Because it's not always unicorns and rainbows like you want it to be, but it's not. I mean, it's no different than our food health journey. It's like this. But for me, like breaking up with alcohol, you're experiencing life in 3D. Like 3D color, like everything is exaggerated and beautiful. And I've got a neighbor who's kind of like flirting with, breaking up with stuff. And I'm like, you have a beautiful life. You travel all the time. You've got these amazing kids. I'm telling you, if you give this a chance, you can't even comprehend how much more incredible your life is going to be. And it's, we live in this culture where like alcohol is just so glamorized. And it's like, oh, it's going to help you with depression. It's going to help you relax. It's going to do all these things. Alcohol causes your anxiety to go through the roof.
100%.
Like if you have cancer or if you've recovered from cancer, and thank God to the number, I've got a lot of friends that you have. Why are you poisoning your body? Like people who have breast cancer. I've got a friend who's on this alcohol-free journey with me, and she's a little over 2 years. And she questioned her doctor and said, why aren't you telling more people who are in here with breast cancer how horrible alcohol is for us, And it's just, it's a shame. But in the last 5 years since I, kind of flirted with breaking up, but really broke up, it's amazing how many people are doing it. Like Ed Sheeran just posted something recently on social media talking about like, I've got this world tour and I've got a family at home. And when I go home to see my kids, I don't want to feel like crap.
Yeah. And someone like that, that has a big influence, right? And that's what
100%.
that's what kind of what you need. But I think what you're going to hear, or what I do hear a lot, and I think you can speak to this, is you haven't stopped being a social person. So
No.
it's no one understands, like, they can't imagine navigating a social situation without alcohol. And I mean, I do it all the time. Now, do I think that there are times where no one wants to invite, like maybe with coworkers or whatever, no one wants to invite the old girl who doesn't drink and eats healthy food to certain things? But you know what? Like, at the end of the day, that's what you're valuing who you hang out with on. You probably don't want to hang out with those people either. But what I'm saying is, I hear the anxiety from the people who have zero clue how they would navigate a social situation. Let's even put it through a work situation, right? You're a business person who goes to lunches or dinners. Like, give folks some idea of how you navigate social situations without alcohol and how it becomes easier as you go.
Yeah. So, and again, I feel like I'm pretty transparent. I'm not going to lie. I always tell people the first 6 months, the first year, it's a little bit challenging. I mean, I would tell everybody I'm a borderline introvert, extrovert, and I've got friends who tell me I'm crazy, but I really am. And what I did learn when I broke up with alcohol is how much social anxiety I have, even though I can talk to a white wall all day long, even if the white wall doesn't talk back to me. But it's in the beginning, it's not a piece of cake because you've always had that glass in your hand as it's like your binky or your blank or whatever. Like, we use that wine glass or your vodka soda. That's your safety blanket. And all of a sudden, and I remember the first time I went to this social event, it was the first Galentine's Day, and I'd asked for a club soda and lime. Oh God. There's like 50 women in, we're in the men's bar at our club, which, it's to get into the men's bar is a big deal already. And they give me a club soda with a lime in the jumbo kids glass. And I wanted it in a cocktail glass because I didn't want anybody to
Yeah.
know I wasn't drinking. I didn't want anybody to know I wasn't drinking. I wanted to blend in with the crowd. So I had to sheepishly walk up to the bar and I'm like, can you put it in a cocktail glass for me? And now, like, I am so proud. Give me that jumbo Pellegrino in a wine glass with some lime and some mint all day long. And another girlfriend of mine who quit drinking, and she's in the business world, and she was watching my story. Like, you don't realize the number of people you're helping, and all of a sudden, somebody calls you and says, "I've been watching you. You
Mm-hmm.
inspired me." And what was so funny about her, because we were both in the technology world, and she said, "Oh my God, I love the fact that I don't drink anymore." Because I'm just sitting there, like, we're all talking, and people get loose lips when they have cocktails. She's like, "I'm the only sober person at the table, so I remember everything." And it has really helped me, my sales game just skyrocket. So it's just, it's that, but it gets easier to order that club soda with lime. It gets easier to order a Heineken Double Zero. Some people don't want any of the mocktails or the non-alcoholic beers. I think it's great that they have those out there.
I do too.
Although they're ungodly expensive, so it's kind of
Yeah.
ridiculous. Like, stick with your club soda and lime. But what I have found, there's a lot of us out there who don't drink. I happen to be open about it. A lot of people are more under the radar because they're embarrassed for various reasons or they're not comfortable with it. But all of a sudden you look around and you're like, oh my gosh, there's others of us out there. And
Mm-hmm.
I do joke around because I fly a lot for work, and I've probably saved Delta a fortune because, when you're sitting economy comfort or whatever, you get your free cocktails or whatever. And when you go in the Sky Club and then
Yeah.
I'm getting my hot tea at 7:30 in the morning, I'm like, oh my God, look at all these people like
Right.
having mimosas and Bloody Marys. It's like 7:30 in the morning. Why? But having the confidence to know that your body thanks you so much for deciding to put alcohol on the side. And, some people, they have that 1 or 2 glasses of wine a week and it's no big deal. But if you're that person that's drinking 2 and 3 glasses of wine or 2 or 3 cocktails a night, which is not uncommon, you're damaging your body. And even like the doctors are saying for men, no more than 2 drinks. For women, it's no more than 1 drink. But I'm telling you, like, it's easier. It's easier, either drink or don't drink. Being stuck in the middle, and that's where I feel like I had one leg on one side of the river and one leg on the other side, and you're
Mm-hmm.
just kind of teetering. And it's like when I finally put both sides over here, like, my life exploded.
Yeah.
for the good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I don't even really think about it very much anymore. I think the only time I was just trying to think about it, like the only time I'll think about it a little bit is there was a period of time where I actually did enjoy tasting a craft beer.
Mhm.
Just the different taste, not necessarily to drink a full craft beer, but like those little flights where you can just taste a beer. So
Right.
our brewery, they have small glasses where they're not even a full size beer you can get. And
Right.
every once in a while, there'll be a new flavor that I want to taste, and I'll taste it.
Yeah.
It's very rare, but I'll do it. And then a holiday, if there's wine, we do the biodynamic natural wine.
Mhm.
Organic natural wine. And I know that because of the less sulfites in that, that does not bother me if I have a glass or two.
Right.
Also, the rule would be if you're going to have something to drink, have it earlier in the day because the closer
Mhm.
you are to bedtime, the worse it is. If you can do like a happy hour, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock versus 8, 9 o'clock, it's going to affect your sleep a little bit less, but it still affects you. And what I would say is the same thing you echoed is even if I'd go out and I'd have one, like in the past, I'd go out and I'd have one and I'd see the REM sleep and the numbers. You just don't get quality sleep, and everything's, oh, I fall right asleep once I've had a beer or two. Sure, you might fall asleep quicker, but the sleep you're actually getting is terrible.
It's
And you're
terrible.
not getting the deep sleep, the REM sleep, the restorative sleep that actually gives you energy and pushes you through to the next day. So there's lots of different ways to do it. And I feel like for me, it was like a slow weaning off of
Mhm.
it and not really a conscious decision to say, I wouldn't say I'm 100% none because there would be a day maybe where I would have a sip or I would have that wine at a holiday, but it's very rare and it
Yeah.
gets more rare. It gets more rare. And then there's sometimes where I would question myself and say, okay, my team just won a national championship and like I really want to have a beer to celebrate. And I think to myself, why?
Yeah.
Why? This is a good thing. Why would I celebrate by doing something that would make me feel lousy? You see, I met this person. It's called my body. We introduced ourselves to each other. We're friends. We do things for each other, right? And so I don't want to do anything that hurts my body because I know what my body does for me. And so, that's kind of the way I look at it. And like I have gratitude, which I know you do too, is
Mhm.
I have gratitude for everything that's been put in front of me because I know it's been put in front of me for a reason. There is no feeling that I'm going to get from a beer or a margarita or a glass of wine out with people that's going to replace how good it feels to feel good and be able to live life the way you want to live.
Oh, for sure. And I just like I couldn't imagine, all of those things. Like and I'll tell you this is a little bit probably personal, but when my ex-husband died, I was so glad that I had quit drinking because God knows what I would have potentially said to my three sons who were 18, 20, and 22 at the time. They're now 22, 24, and 26. I would have said, oh my God, your dad had issues forever, blah, 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 blah. What I've said he deserved. Who knows what I would have said to them? And to be able to have a clear mind and have compassion for somebody who lost their struggle with this disease, I mean, because you got people who drink too much and you've got like addicts, like there's all these different things. And like to be able to have compassion for them, and
Mm-hmm.
but like it's funny, like when you talk about like your sports, team winning, or
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about waste management.
Yeah,
When people go out there, it is a
I know.
cluster. And I'm thinking, you guys spend a fortune on these tickets. And I've gone to golf tournaments when I've been way overserved. And now that I'm not overserved, I'm like, do you guys realize what you're missing? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty out here. You know that you're here, but it's like you're you're not here. You're not present.
Yep.
You're not seeing, you know, Tiger, whoever, like this amazing, like you may have seen the shot, but you didn't really see the shot. And I
Right.
think that that's been the greatest thing for me. Like, I love nature. I mean, I look out onto the sea of Nate Green in my backyard, and I loved it before I stopped drinking. Well, now, like, we had a lot of rain a couple weeks ago. And, as spring, as everything's coming into bloom, I'm like, I'm staring at a Monet painting out my window.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I notice life. Like, I was in life, but I wasn't seeing life at
Mm-hmm.
this intensity. And that's just something like there's not a cocktail out there that tastes as good as like the mental freedom and the peace and the calm and my body thanking me. People all the time is like, oh, you're so fun when you drank. I'm like, yeah, I was, but I also felt like And it's not like I was hungover all the time. My body hated it.
Yeah. Yeah. It might have been fun for you, but it wasn't fun for me on the back
Yeah.
end. And that's why people have to understand that. If people don't understand it, it might be time to get new friends. And I say that in all the kindest ways. But if someone's barometer for hanging out with you is that you have to have a drink to hang out with them because that's the only way they think you're fun, then it's time to find new friends. You know,
Yeah.
that's the reality of it. So I also want you to, before we finish, I want you to also talk about the gratitude mindset and the positivity, because I know you and I also both talk about, like, we follow the same path. That's why I'm
Yeah.
saying we're very fond of our friend John Gordon and everything
Yes.
that he does, and I know that the energy bus certainly changed my life. So I do want to talk about that because the mindset does matter. So I wanted to have you talk about how that also has positively impacted you and your journey.
And I think I was like always kind of a glass half full kind of person, but I wasn't really practicing gratitude. I wasn't intentionally practicing gratitude. And, I don't even remember how I stumbled across John Gordon. I mean, but he and his wife used to live here in Atlanta, and he opened one of this bar here in Atlanta that everybody went to because we're about in the same age group or whatever. It's shocking we didn't know each other, back in the day. But, when I did stop drinking, I was working with somebody on a pretty regular basis, just kind of like finding my feet in the world of living alcohol free. And one of the things that she really said to me, I need you to do a gratitude journal every day. I want you to write down 5 things that you're thankful for. And it wasn't just like, don't think 5 things, put it to pen to paper, or, like sometimes I would text it or whatever. Kind of like Whole30, like 2 weeks into it, I was like, this light bulb moment. It's like, man, I feel good. And when I started writing down 5 things that I was thankful for, like all of a sudden, like my world again started shifting. And, because I was doing my gratitude journal when I found out I had Sjogren's, and everybody's like, oh my God, that's awful. And I'm like, no, it's not. I've just solved a piece of my puzzle. Like,
Right.
I'm not crazy. And so for me, I'm not thrilled that I have Sjogren's, borderline lupus, but guess what? It answers a lot of questions.
Yep.
And so, people, it's really crazy that it's like living in gratitude is really challenging for people. And I didn't realize that. But I think people are expecting like, oh, I won the lottery. I won $10 million. I'm happy. And I'm like, I'm happy with when my husband brings me my warm cup of chai tea in the morning. I'm happy when it rains because my grass grows. Like, I'm grateful when people can take a step back. It is the little everyday miracles that happen in life that turn, it's like this snowball effect. It's working with Will Cole. It was working with you. And, I know I had success with Whole30, and I'm a person who I love coaching. People make fun of me. My friends have said, why do you have so many coaches? And they were like, how many do you have this week or whatever? But it's like, I love coaching. All the people who are achieving things in life, like Michael Jordan,
Yep.
Kobe Bryant, Tiger Woods, all of them, guess what they have in common? They have coaches. And so I'm an advocate of coaching. And I feel like bringing Will Cole into my life, bringing you into my life, bringing my friend Busy into my life. I work with this one, Bonnie. I've worked with her for 10 years. She's my spiritual coach. She's the one who told me when I met her, and I was her first client. I did not know that till recently. But in my first meeting with her, she said, and she's spiritual, so it's maybe a little bit out there for some people, but she said, I'm just kind of being told by the guides, until you remove alcohol from your life, you're not going to live the life that you want to live. And I'm like, oh, what do you mean I need to cut back? And she's like, no, like you need to like break up with
Yeah.
alcohol. Meanwhile, I know she's got this amazing wine cellar, so she's not anti-drinking, but it took me 5 years. And when I broke up with alcohol, like I said earlier, my world exploded for the better. And I had a great life beforehand. But if people would just write down 5 things every day, and at the end of the week, go back and read those things, or
Yeah.
at the end of the month, like you will be amazed at all of the natural beauty, like going and, seeing like the sunset when you're driving home and the cloud cover and the way that the light comes through. Like for you, like to me, you have like this amazing job because I'm a sports junkie, and like you live in this, you're in the health world and you're in the sports world. So you're like at the top of my list of, you won the lottery, like your job takes you to some of the most beautiful courses in the country.
world,
And,
in the world,
and
places I would never have gotten to go.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like to go out there and say, thank you, God and the universe or whatever. And I had hip replacement surgery 2.5 weeks ago. I listened to my body and I was having this terrible groin pain. And, my doctor said 57-year-old women don't have torn labrums. Well, guess what? I did. And, it wasn't affecting my day-to-day life, but it was affecting my exercise life, which is a huge part of my sanity.
Yeah.
But when I came out of, because you're knocked out. And when I woke up, guess what? I woke up to myself talking to God, thanking him for my doctor, thanking him for my beautiful life, thanking him for my friends, thanking him for my husband being here and taking time off from work, thanking my company for allowing me to check out for a little bit to take care of this health issue I was having. And so it was just really funny to me that like as I'm coming to, the first thing I realized, it's like, oh, I'm here, like chatting with God about like everything I'm thankful for. Thankful that I'm having the surgery that, I can't do it now, but I'm going to hike the rim to rim to rim at the Grand Canyon in either next year or in 2 years, thanking him for me listening to my body and taking care of it now instead of waiting 10 years so I
Yeah.
can have my life back, so I can live the way that I want to live.
Right. And you're like me, like that was my why. Like I'm not willing to give up how I live my life. So that here's the thing. No drink, no chocolate chip cookie. Like none of that is worth changing how I want to live my life. I want to be active. I want to live longer, die shorter. That's the goal, right? Live
Yes,
longer, die shorter.
100%.
Because that's not the way a lot of people are living. But you have a say in how this goes, and it's just again your why and prioritizing what's the most important thing. And if the most important thing is that you want to do what you set out to do, then you'll make these decisions most of the time. Like I get it,
Yeah.
it's not perfect. We're never going to sit here and portray and tell someone that you have to be perfect, and that if you're not perfect, you got to go back to the beginning and start all over again. It's not how it works. You have to be able to move past it. Perfectionist mindset certainly hurt enough of my life in the past. It doesn't happen anymore, but you'll be happy to know. I'm a big gratitude walk person, kind of like John is, where I'll
Mhm.
do it on the walks. I'm
Yeah.
not always writing it down. I have done it before where I've written it down.
And I'm more like there now, but I
Yeah.
think initially it's
Yeah.
important because you get in that
I
habit
agree.
when you
I
put pen to
agree.
paper.
And
Yeah.
I think it like the 5 minute journal, like that's an easy one to
Mhm.
just go by. And if you need the prompts, you can do that. Like now I don't need prompts to write things, right? Because it's been a long time. And
Right.
you'll be happy to know my couple of my gratitude walks last week were out at Amen Corner. Because when there's no play out at Amen Corner, like on the weekend, early in the day, it's the most peaceful place on the planet.
Yeah.
And so, where else better to do a
Yeah.
gratitude walk than Amen Corner? And if you're getting annoyed about your job, like I do, like anyone else sometimes, right?
Yeah.
I'm sitting there like, okay, let's be real here. Okay. Take a deep breath and think about this. I am standing at Amen Corner. There are very few people out here. There's not many people in the world that get to do that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So I think that's an important tip for sure.
That's the thing. And when sometimes when people are like complaining about life, I'm like, oh my God, take a step back and like
Hmm.
just find beauty. And it doesn't have to be at Augusta National.
Right.
You can find beauty in the parking lot at Publix, picking up to go. Like my husband went to go get Mexican food for us a couple weeks ago, and I was thrilled because I'm moving him to the other side, which is super exciting. And he sent me a picture of the clouds and the
Yep.
sunset coming, and he's like, my God. And it's in the Kroger parking lot leaving the Mexican takeout.
Yeah.
And he's like, look at this.
Yep.
So
You can find it if you want
you
to,
can
you can
find it.
find it for
It's
sure.
out there and it makes life easier. You don't have to have the most spectacular moment to find
Right.
gratitude, or you don't have to have the deepest pockets to get the farm raised, grass fed, grass finished beef. Like you can still find health
Yeah.
in our everyday food. So don't look at this as it's just, oh, only rich people can do these things.
Yeah, and farmers markets, they help. Farmers markets are big because you're doing double the help there. You're helping yourself, but you're helping others and local
Yeah.
farmers that are trying to do that. So that's always a big help. So, I do hope that some of these things become more accessible down the road because that is I think, what all of us want. So I do hope that it happens. So
Yeah.
before we go, I want you to give everyone a way they can connect with you. So if they want to connect with you on social media and see what you're talking about, and you can inspire them to see what life is like of gratitude and living alcohol free, how can they connect with you?
Yeah. So my Instagram page is Living Clear and Present. And I'm under Kathy, I think it's Kathy King Young or Kathy Briggs Young. I've got remarried. So my middle name, my maiden name is in some of it, and my former married name, because, you know, all my boys' friends still know me as Kathy Young or Kathy Briggs. But on Instagram, it's, you know, Living Clear and Present. And I do have it as private because I had an account that was hacked and I lost. It was my personal account and I lost it. And so, you know, I end up going in there and making sure that you're safe, and, you know, we'll accept people. But I would love to, you know, connect with you. And life is so much better when you listen to your body and you start taking care of your body and your health, and connecting with people who are excited about living a healthy lifestyle. I mean, it's just, it's life-changing.
Well, I can't wait to continue to follow your journey. I appreciate you coming on. I know we could talk for another hour.
Yeah.
We'll have to do another episode for that one, because I'm sure something will come up too that we will talk about. We could have done a whole podcast on what we learned from John Gordon. I mean, that's a podcast by itself.
No
So
kidding. Well, I took I met him in person. Like, I took one of his classes. I flew to Scottsdale, and it was just,
he's a great guy. He's a great guy.
so great. Yeah. And
he's a really great guy. He does great things. His books are simple to read, easy to understand. So I always tell people, like, that's a great place to start, because he's not going to inundate you with a lot of technical mumbo jumbo. And when you're speaking in fables and stories like that, it's actually way easier to understand and relate, which is why I think the Energy Bus is so effective. So anyway, we hope everyone gets motivated after hearing this to go out and do a gratitude walk or fill in their gratitude journal and think about their relationship with alcohol and their food. And hopefully it inspires someone. So thank you for coming on, Kathy.
Oh my God, thank you for having me. I'm beaming, as you can tell. I'm thrilled to be here. So thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Ripple Effect Connection. As always, I thank you for being part of this episode of Ripple Effect Connection. We'll see you next time. Let's create waves of change together.